Once the first volleys of fire subsided, the slaughter descended into unrestrained barbarity. Continuous musket fire tore through the camp, cutting down dozens. Some women, clutching their children, tried to surrender, but most were given no chance. The soldiers entered the abandoned tents where the true horror unfolded. August Jäger, one of the German recruits in the foreign region, later confessed.
Through continuous fire from the infantry, many were killed. Some women with their children surrendered, but the majority remained hidden. Then the troops entered the abandoned tents, where they committed many atrocities.
Another observer, Wilhelm Schimper, recorded a chilling testimony of a soldier boasting about his crime.
One of these murderers told me with a look of bravura, "I have massacred many." A boy stood at the back of a tent. I shouted to him, "Get out, you scoundrel, or I'll put a bullet through your brain." The beast didn't obey. I pulled the trigger, and half of his head hung in the tent canvas.
Schimper, horrified, added,
The innocent and frightened Bedouin boy was supposed to obey the call. Given to him in a foreign language he did not even understand.
The massacre spared no one. Children were murdered in their mothers' arms, and soon after, the mothers themselves. Jäger provides a gruesome example.
A young, blooming woman with a nursing infant at her breast was struck severely by a musket ball. Despite her injury, she held the innocent child with infinite love. Then a chasseur came, pierced the mother with a lance, and laughingly impaled the infant on the blood-soaked spear.
Conveniently, the African chasseurs, cavalrymen in French service, were later solely blamed for the worst of the atrocities. Hermann Hauber described their actions.
They slaughtered defenseless women and children and committed atrocities with bloody gusto that the pen bristles to describe. They hung bloody heads with threadbare ropes from their saddle and rode proudly and laughingly with these trophies to the city.
Looting accompanied the carnage. Soldiers severed hands from women to steal jewelry, tore valuables from the dead, and mocked their victims as they displayed their trophies. The women and children who survived the massacre were captured and driven to La Maison Carrée blockhouse as captives. The women had taken extreme measures to avoid being raped by the French, showing high degrees of purity and chastity typical of Algerian women.
The women smeared their faces and bodies with filth in order not to please us. Our commander had the one he considered the most beautiful washed by 2 soldiers and wanted to keep her as a companion or perhaps cook.
August Jäger affirms with admiration.
The women were so loyal to their fallen or escaped husbands that they tried to disfigure their appearance in every possible way to avoid attention and desire. For this purpose, they even resorted to the most repulsive means. Many had smeared their faces and arms with cow dung.
Fortunately for them, orders arrived a few days later to set all prisoners free. Once the screams of the dying faded, the battlefield turned into a marketplace of theft. The soldiers scoured the camp, looting everything of value. Whatever could not be carried away was deliberately destroyed. Gold and silver ornaments were stripped from the bodies of the dead. One soldier, unable to remove a bracelet from a woman's wrist, drew his saber and simply severed her hand. Others stuffed their packs with whatever treasure they could find. But the greatest prize was not trinkets, it was livestock. The tribe of Oufia possessed vast herds, and the French plundered them without restraint. 26 camels, around 50 horses and mules, dozens of donkeys, more than 800 cattle, and nearly 4,000 sheep were seized. This immense booty was sold off to military suppliers, with the profits later shared among the troops. August Jäger admitted with cruel pride,
Several of my friends and I also received our share of this glorious victory over poorly armed, ambushed savages.
Even General Grissot, writing apologetically years later, could not conceal the scale of the looting.
La Légion showed great enthusiasm. It received 10,000 francs in prizes.
Thus, what began as a massacre ended as a lucrative transaction. The blood of Oufia's people was not only spilled, it was converted into profit for an army that clocked plunder in the language of victory. Official French sources tried to minimize the atrocity. They spoke of 8 to 120 dead, a neat figure, small enough to pass as a skirmish rather than a massacre. But the testimonies of the very soldiers who carried out the bloodbath tell another story. Auguste Jäger himself, a participant, admitted that the survivors did not return to their tribe. Instead, they wandered broken and scattered among foreign tribes. His words reveal a grim truth. Oufia had been wiped out so thoroughly that it ceased to exist as a community. This interpretation is supported by colonial records themselves. When the French conducted the census of the tribes in the region of Algiers in 1852, just 20 years after the massacre, Oufia's name was missing. 30 tribes were listed, Oufia was not among them. Oufia was not simply banished, it was erased. A people obliterated, their names struck from the map. This was more than a reprisal. It was extermination. Among the captives taken after the massacre was the chieftain of Oufia, Sheikh Rabia. General de Rovigo wasted no time. He convened the war council to try the Sheikh for treason against France. Baron Pichon, the civil intendant of Algiers, pleaded for clemency. Deputations from neighboring tribes supported him. Even the Agha Mahiddin, alongside the French chief of staff, asked de Rovigo to release the Sheikh, but the general was unmoved. Despite mounting evidence that Oufia was innocent, de Rovigo pressed forward with the trial. The stolen goods had been recovered down to the last item. Testimonies proved the real culprits belonged to another tribe, yet Sheikh Rabia and one of his notables were condemned to death and executed on April 19, 1832. Why? As PDC later admitted,
to acquit the chief was to declare the people innocent and to morally condemn the one who had ordered the massacre. To avoid this logical conclusion, Rabia was therefore condemned.
It was a grotesque parody of justice, a staged trial not to uphold the law but to shield de Rovigo from accountability.